is to do with interior, kind of your interior renderings. Okay, so if I go back to my floor plan here, and I'm going to place myself another camera, right in the corner like this. Out at the open, there we go. All right. So if we start to drag this out, all right, if we think about what I was talking about with the perspective there, the farther out it gets, the more skewed it looks, all right? So you can see what I'm kind of talking about here. The objects all the way over on the side look a bit skewed, all right? If we scroll it like this, okay, so we have a nice interior view here. All right, what I'm going to want to do is I'm going to place some light fixtures here, all right? So if we go back to the floor plan, all right, so right around this area, so I'm going to place a couple light fixtures. So if I go to insert, all right, either insert to load family, okay, or if under architecture, I go to component, all right, I'm going to go to load family, and here it says lighting, all right, we're going to go to architectural, internal, all right, you'll see you have a number of different lights to select from here, all right, what I would say is, I think I mentioned it before, is there's probably a number of different lights here, whether it's ceiling lights or kind of wall sconces or anything like that are hosted lights, so you'll have to place them into a ceiling, right, or place them up against a wall. But I'm just going to pick, for example, this floor lamp right here. All right, we're going to hit OK, open. All right, and then I'm going to place a few of them around, all right, just so we can get a little bit of light in here. All right, so if we go to 3D view 2, right, so we have our lights right there. Okay. All right. So if I was to go from here and go into my rendering dialog, all right, draft, change this from exterior to interior, sun and artificial, all right, we're going to want to go and change our sun settings. All right, let's do it something like this. Actually, instead of AM, the PM, I'm going to change it to AM so it comes from a different direction. Okay. All right, and I'm just going to run a draft. All right, you'll notice when you have light fixtures in here, it's probably going to take a little bit longer. All right, so bear with it when it runs through its rendering process. Okay, because when it does have the artificial lights, all right, it tends to take a little more time to run that rendering. All right, so take that into account when you're placing different objects into your model. All right, so we'll let that run its course. All right, so there we are. Here we go. All right, so now we have our building, or our rendering rather, right, with our lights. So a couple things to check with our light fixtures, all right, is A, look around them to make sure that they're casting some light, right? In this case, if you look at it, it looks like the light's on, all right? That feature of having it actually look like it's on, all right, it happens to be a material setting, which I'll show you guys in a second, all right? But just look around the area and make sure that you can see the light that it's casting, okay? If for some reason this isn't casting a light, all right, so if I change this down 5, 6, say something like 5 a.m., all right, and there's not a whole lot of sun coming through here, and I run this rendering, all right, as you'll see that there's not as much sun coming through, so we're going to see more of the light fixtures instead, all right, or we should rather see more of the light fixtures instead of just the sunlight, all right, as you want to make sure that it's actually casting light, all right, and if it's not, as we'll walk through in a second how you can double check it and make sure that it is, and how you can change it, but all right, so you can kind of see here that these light fixtures, all right, you can see the light that's casting below it, all right, if you have a different fixture, make sure that, obviously you're checking that as well. Okay. But let's say, for instance, one of these lights here, all right, it's not casting light, right? You're looking at it, there's no visible area that it's showing light, right? If you went and turned the sun off completely and you ran a rendering, right, there's no light in your entire building, okay? Chances are is that your lighting family is not emitting a light, all right? Your default families in here that you're loading into Revit are more than likely going to have light coming out of them just fine. But if there are light fixtures you download on the internet or anything like that, sometimes they don't have the lighting fixture set up correctly. All right, so you may have to go in and kind of adjust it. All right, so let's say that these were not projecting light. Okay, if you were to select on one of them, and we're going to open up the family. All right, if we select and hit edit family, right, we've opened up the actual file family or a family file for this lighting fixture. Okay, we can see here. What you're looking for is this little dome-shaped yellow piece right here. All right, I'm not sure how easily you can see it on the recording. All right, but I'm going to select it. And so we're looking for this little dome-shaped piece that's yellow. All right, and what it's called is a light source. So you want to make sure that your light fixture has a light source, right? Because this light source is what actually projects the light out into your building. Right, so if you're familiar with any sort of rendering tools, all right, you'll be familiar with light sources. All right, so it's imperative that you know where it is and whether or not your fixtures have them. Okay, now it might be a half sphere like this. All right, it might be something that looks like a cylinder. All right, if you click on it, the little light source definition. All right, you can see the different shapes and different ways that you can actually distribute light with this fixture. All right, but the important thing is that it is distributing light and you have one, right? So if there's a case where it's not distributing light and the family does have this in it, all right, you may just have to come into the family and adjust the setting of this, all right? So this one's set up nicely so that there's a hole in the bottom of the top of this light fixture here, right? But a lot of times if it's not casting any light, sometimes people will build the fixtures and this light source will be kind of like inside of a piece of geometry that doesn't have any hole in the bottom, so there's no light that could come out. All right, so you might just have to move it up and down and kind of adjust where it sits. All right, it might be something as simple as that. But again, just kind of double check yourself and make sure that there's a light source there. All right. Now, in terms of the top of this lighting up, all right, when you actually run that rendering, if we go back to this here, right? If you look at them and it looks like they're actually lit up, right? That's actually a material setting, all right? So if we go back into it here and we select the top little piece, okay? Under material, it says glass frosted, all right? Shade, okay? We come into the settings, right here under shade, glass frosted, right? If we look at the material for that, okay, and underneath the appearance settings, right? So under glass, what you can actually do is if we scroll down, right, it has, because as I was saying under the class, under the description here, it's important to set it because for glass, what it has is the option for self-illumination, all right? And basically, what self-illumination does is it make it look exactly like the image shows up here. It's basically like a light bulb, like it's lit up. All right, so you can build, a light fixture in there and put it in, and it can be projecting light, right? But when you run the rendering, it might not actually look like that object is lit up unless the material you have set for, let's say, the top of it is set like this here, where it has self-illumination. All right, so just kind of keep that in mind if you're going through your files and your different fixtures, and you notice that it doesn't look like it's lit up, but it's projecting light. All right, it might be a material setting. Okay. All right, but since this one has a light source with it, and it's fine, we'll go ahead and exit out. I'm not going to change anything with it. All right, but that's just something you need to check to make sure that it's there. Okay, again with the rendering here. All right, what you can do as well with the lights is if you select it, one of your lights, and go into the type settings of it, if you scroll all the way down in the bottom of your light fixtures, you'll see that you have the photometric settings. All right, and generally, if for some reason your lights are there and you have a bunch of them and it's just not giving you enough light inside, if you just kind of go in here with the initial intensity, click on this, and just crank the wattage up. All right, right here, this one happens to be at 60. If you crank this wattage way up, all right, basically it's going to make that light a bit brighter. Okay, and it'll actually, cast a little bit more light in here. Right, for accuracy's sake, obviously the light bulb in there is probably not going to be that bright, but if you're just trying to make your rendering look nice, that's something you can do, right? Aside from cranking up the settings on your light fixtures, right? There's also a way what you can do with interior renderings that's kind of not really cheating, but it's kind of a little workaround to trick Revit into thinking that there's more natural light coming into your room than there is. All right. Now it's going to be a bit drastic when we do it here with this view, right, because of the direction of the sun, right? But we're going to do it anyways. All right. As I'm just going to X out of the rendering dialog box for now, right? But if you remember when we were talking about your regular default 3D view, right, and how we pulled up the section box and you can drag your section box in and kind of cut through your building, right, in your 3D section, all right? Your perspective views also have your section boxes, all right? So even though this is a perspective view, you still have a 3D section box you can use. So if you scroll down in your view settings, all right, and click on section box here, right, you'll see that in your 3D view, it shows you your section box, okay? So what we're going to do is, if you think of Revit, okay, even though we're facing this direction here, all right, Revit still sees, or in terms of the program itself, as the objects, they're kind of outside of what you're actually looking at here. So in terms of the walls over here and behind you that you can't see out of your view, right, Revit still kind of thinks that those walls are there and takes that into account when it runs the rendering, right, for light and stuff like that. So what we can do with this section box is that we can actually use this section box and cut out certain walls, all right, that we can't actually see in our view, right? So that way, kind of tricking Revit into thinking that wall's no longer there and lets in our light from the outside, right, and kind of artificially floods this room with natural sunlight, all right, because Revit will think the wall's no longer there, okay? So if we go to a floor plan so we can look at this kind of accurately, all right, is my 3D view 2, all right, if we right click here, in the same place where we go to show camera, now that we have the section box turned on, if we do show section box, all right, basically that's going to show us the section box of what it has turned on for that view. All right, so if I scroll this in, all right, get it nice and close to the building, all right, as if we remember in that view, as we're looking and we can really see kind of just to the left of this window here, we can see just over here, right? So we can't actually see this back wall, and we can't see this wall to the left, right? So if I go and I scroll this section box, so it's just to the inside of that wall, okay? We go back to the view. Okay, visually, right here in the view, doesn't look any different because, again, we can't see that wall anyways, right? But if I bring my rendering back up, all right, I run another render, okay, you'll see what's going to happen is that Revit now reads this section box is coming in saying, okay, well, that wall that was here on the left, that's no longer there anymore because you used the section box to cut it out. So what it's going to do, as you'll see, is Revit reads it as not being there. So what it does is all of the light that comes and would hit that wall and no longer come into your building, that now all rushes into your room. Okay? So even though you can't see that wall, all right, is you can use that section box and kind of cut it out and kind of trick Revit into thinking that that area is now all wide open, and it kind of brings in some more natural light into your room, all right? So, if you're thinking something like doing a rendering in the basement or something like that, and there's no windows and you can't get the lights to really show, show up at all, and, can't get them to look right, is you might want to do something like that where you use a section box and kind of cut out one of the walls you can't see, and then let Revit bring in some natural light. Now, obviously, there's going to be different times of day where the sun's a little bit harsher, so you're going to want to play around with the sun settings, all right? So you don't have, direct sunlight during lunchtime coming blasting into your room, right? Because that won't look very realistic, right? But you can usually get the sun to be coming in at a relatively mellow time, so it looks like pretty, easy, mellow light. And then you can kind of screw around with the exposure and things like that to make it look, relatively nice and kind of even across the board. All right. So again, that's kind of a nice little trick you can do with your section box. What else is nice with your section box as well that allows you to do is, so going on the same idea that even though you can't see this wall to the left or behind, is that Revit still kind of calculates that as being there, right? The same goes for objects that are behind walls, let's say out in the distance here, right? So if this room behind here had, a bunch of different lights or a bunch of different pieces of furniture and things like that, all right, the more objects that Revit has that it has to calculate out and kind of render, right, whether it's furniture or whether it is lights, all right, the more time it's going to take for Revit to render your view out, okay? So what you can do with your section box, and what I recommend you do, even if you're not trying to do the trick here where you're cutting out walls, is I would recommend is turning on your section box, all right, and bringing it as close in to the area that you can see with that view as possible, all right, because what it does is it basically tells Revit what's not in this view. So whereas, the angle's a little bit difficult here, but if, you had a bunch of rooms, let's say way out here on the beyond this outside wall, all right, is even though, if you had this section box off, even though in this view you can't physically see through the wall here, right, Revit still calculates out the objects in here and still tries to render them, even though you can't see through that wall. All right, so if you can imagine you have this huge building out here and you have a bunch of different furniture and lights and everything like that, if you hit render and all you want to see in is this little room, all right, is Revit's going to go and try and calculate out all the different types of objects and lights that are all the way out here in the past that room itself, right, unless you turn on that section box, okay? So you can significantly reduce rendering time if you use this section box, okay? And again, is you don't need to use it for exactly like we did here to cut out the wall, as I would recommend just at least bringing it close into the area, as close as you can to the area that you're rendering out, right, without taking out any elements. So that way Revit's only looking at this one area that you're trying to render out, okay? Again, it can significantly cut down on rendering time. In this case, not so much because we don't have a big build, but if you are getting into something larger, generally speaking, that's a nice way to kind of cut down on some time.